ಲಾ ಎಕ್ಸಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಐಎಎಸ್ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿ ಭರವಸೆಯ ಬೆಳಕು.
So you all have got that PDF, or I mean that hard copy of the important current affairs topics from last week, huh? Basically, otherwise I am Divyanshu, right? Just for today I have come here. I'll be taking your today's class of current affairs, or basically current affairs of what happened in last week. Fine. Do you all read newspaper? Do you all read newspaper? Huh? Yes or no? Only few. Those who read, you can raise your hands. Those who have started reading newspaper. Those who are aware what is happening around. Fine. And have you people started preparation recently, or I mean, how much static has been covered? How much of polity, history, economy, these subjects have been covered? Polity and economy has started. The rest of the subjects, no. Okay. Fine. So this class is going to be of 1.5 hours. We'll try to cover as much as possible, right? So this hard copy which you have got, it consists of nearly 10-15 topics. We'll not be able to finish these many in today's class. I mean, depending upon how much we can cover, we'll try to cover, right? So I'll be taking such topics which are relatively more important. Out of these 10-12 also, which are relatively more important, I'll taking them first, right? Now, first topic I am going to take is something called as electoral. What do you mean by electoral bond? To fund political parties, they issue something called as electoral bond. Why do political parties they need money? You said to fund political party, we issue bond. They issue bond, right? But why do political parties they need money? Right? So you see, India is basically a democracy. That much you understand. What is democracy? One essential feature of democracy is free and fair elections. So democracy has many features, but one essential feature of democracy is free and fair elections. What do you mean by free elections? Free election would mean that everyone, all the voters, they should have freedom to choose anyone they want. There should be no pressure exerted on you. You have to vote in this particular manner, right? Then elections will be free. What do you mean by fair elections? In democracy, right, what we are discussing is electoral bond scheme. And I was telling you that India is basically a democratic nation, and one essential feature of a democracy is free and fair elections. What do you mean by free elections is all the voters, right, there should be no pressure on voter. So in this 2024 year, right, in this year only we have elections, general election, right? You all might be above 18. On you people, there should not be any pressure that you have to vote to this candidate, to this party, right? Then elections will be considered as free elections. What do you mean by fair elections? More number of parties are involved in election. Is that fair election? So fair, when we talk about fairness in elections, what does it mean? That those who are contesting election, so there will be many contestants, right? Those who are contesting elections, for them it is a fair game. Everyone has a fair chance to win the election, right? If a candidate is from BJP, from Congress, from JDS, or independent, right, all of them, they should have a fair chance to win. For them it should be a level playing field. Like, let's say in a cricket match, if umpire itself is a biased, can that game be a fair game? No. So similarly here also, for, I mean, no party should be, let's say no party should be giving money to get votes. If they are able to do it, then the elections are not fair, right? Because the party which is giving money, that party has now higher chance to get votes. Then elections are not fair. Are you getting it? So free and fair elections, you understand now? So freedom, when we talk about free elections, it means from the point of view of voters. And when we talk about fair elections, it is from the point of view of contestants who are contesting elections. Now, political parties, in order to, I mean, contest election, what they need is they need money. As you all rightly said, they need money to contest election, to do campaigning, right? And so many other activities during elections you might have seen, right? So all of them, they are doing rallies, campaigning. From where they are getting money? They need money. That is right. From where these political parties are getting money? They are not into any business, right? They are not corporate. We are, I mean, producing these goods and services. By selling these goods and services, we are getting money. No, right? So they are not involved in any economic activity. They are not getting money from the state as well. State is also not paying any money to the political parties. Then from where political parties are getting money to spend in all these activities? Are you getting my question? That political parties, you said political parties, they need money to spend during campaigning and all. But from where political parties they get money? So here comes the funding issue. In election, electoral funding, it is a big topic. You will be studying in polity. You will be studying in polity. I will be restricting myself to electoral bond scheme. Right? So political parties, they need money, but from where they get funding? So political parties have two sources of funding. Political parties, they have two sources of funding. One source is people like you and me. So individuals, if you are, let's say you are aligning to the ideology of a political party, you feel this political party is good for the nation, this leader is good for the nation, I want this person to become prime minister. What you can do is you can donate some money to that political party, right? One source of money for political parties is by individual donating money to political parties. Is it clear till now? That individuals, people like you, me, our family members, the father, mother, all of them, they have a right to donate money to political parties. Now I am using the word donation. Donation means it is a voluntary thing. It is not coercive. Political parties can't demand. They can just appeal to us. If you like, then you can give this money. It is not like tax. Tax we have to give anyhow. But this is donation. Donation has an element of voluntariness. Only if you want to, then you give. If you don't want to, no need to give money. Is it clear? Second source of funding for political parties is similar kind of donation, but donation not by individuals but by corporates. Second source of income for political parties, it is donation not by individuals but by corporates. Now you see, now you understand from where they get money, that is fine, but the motive for which these two type of entities they give money to political parties, that is different. I said individuals, they donate money generally to political parties because they align to ideology of a political party. They like particular leader. On the other hand, when corporates they give money, they give very huge amount of money. For example, if I have to give money, I can give 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 rupees, not more than that, right? I have limited income. But when corporates pay, they pay in crores. So corporates, they give this money to political parties, they want something in return. Their motive is different. What they want in return is, if you come to power, later on you make policies, such policies to us, which is favorable to us. It is called as, in Latin there is a proverb called quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. What does it mean? I scratch your back, you do mine. We are giving you money, in return you do something for us. Is it clear? So when you come to power, you make such policies, you start such schemes which will be favoring to us, and sometimes to only one or two corporates, right? If a particular corporate has given, enormous amount of money to a political party, if that political party later on comes to power, political party might have to give contract, let's say road ka contract or metro contract. They have to give that contract to that. Now this kind of intention for giving money is not right. Huh? Here intention is right, but here intention is to get something in return. Here intention was noble. We like this leader, we like this political party, we don't want something in return. Just because we find this political party, we like the, let's say, manifesto, political manifesto, you understand, manifesto. Just before elections, all the political parties, they release their manifesto. Recently Congress has done it. Huh? So if you like the manifesto, you give donation to that party, right? Now till now, is it clear about political funding? Now what happened in 2017? What happened in 2017? The funding to political parties, in that mechanism of funding, they brought a new scheme. That new scheme is called as electoral bond scheme. So this scheme is very recent. Just in 2017 it was brought. And acha, why it is in news? Supreme Court has declared this scheme in the month of February as unconstitutional or null and void. What do you mean by why Supreme Court does it? Why Supreme Court, declare a particular scheme or law as unconstitutional? Now, in general, why do Supreme Court does it, or High Courts they do it? They declare any particular law or particular scheme as unconstitutional. So have you heard about something called as doctrine of basic structure in polity? Keshwanand Bharti case, have you heard about it? Basically, that in that case, Supreme Court said, if any act, if any scheme, if any executive order of the government, if it violates the basic structure of the constitution, the basic elements of the constitution, such law, such scheme, such order of the government will be declared as unconstitutional. Such order, even if you pass it, even if you pass a law by full majority in parliament, but if it violates the basic structure of the constitution, that law will not allowed to implement. Is it clear? For example, to give you example of basic structure, for example, our constitution says India is a secular nation. What does it mean? Now you can't make a law which is discriminating individuals in the name of religion. Is it clear? Because secularism is a basic structure of the constitution. Now you can't make any law which will be discriminating the citizens in the name of. Article 15 also says the same thing, right? The state shall not discriminate citizens in the name of 5 things: caste, sex, religion, race, and place of birth. Right? So because Article 15, fundamental rights, it is a basic structure. Now state, even if state is passing, or parliament is passing a law by full majority also, all the MPs, they are voting in favor of a law, but if it violates the basic structure, it cannot be implemented. Is it clear? Same thing Supreme Court said, electoral bond scheme is unconstitutional. I'll be coming to that, why Supreme Court said so. First we'll be discussing the features of this scheme. What is this scheme all about? But I gave you that context because this is the reason why this scheme is in news. Is it clear? Supreme Court recently declared this scheme as unconstitutional. Now, the moment you find anything difficult, you please raise your hand and ask. Now, this scheme, you see. So, as I said, this scheme was brought in the year 2017. By the Finance Act of 2017, this scheme was brought. It does not mean before 2017 there was no mechanism to fund political parties. Earlier also political parties, they were getting money, they were contesting election, they were spending money. No. So earlier also there was some mechanism to fund a political party. What changed after this scheme? I'll be discussing that. So you see, the funding of political parties, right? The majority of the provisions regarding this, they are there in a particular act named as Representation of People's Act 1951. What is the act? Name of the act? Representation of People's Act 1951. It generally deals with what are political parties, which political parties are considered as national parties, which political parties are considered as state parties, all such things, all the provisions related to elections also, most of them they are given in this act, right? This act earlier or prior to this scheme of electoral bond, prior to 2017, this act used to say few things. First thing is, first provision regarding funding to political party, first provision was no political party, right? No political party can take donation above 20,000 rupees without recording the name or identity of the donor. Is it clear? If someone is making a donation above 20,000 rupees, the political party has to record the identity, the name, etc. of that donor. Such a donation above 20,000 cannot be anonymous. Is it clear? A donation above 20,000 rupees, it cannot be anonymous. It has to be shown in the record of the political party. Which political party, after the end of financial year, they submit it to Election Commission of India. These records, balance sheet of the political party, they have to submit it to Election Commission of India. But basically, you see, public, they get to know who has given how much money. If they are paying above 20,000, who has given how much money to which political party. There was provision to know. Again, you see, the objective was, if somebody is making large donation, their identity should be disclosed. If people like you and me, right, who can't influence the policies or decisions of the political party, if we are making donation, our right to privacy should be upheld. Right? If I'm giving 5,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, I can't ask Prime Minister to make policies according to me. My influence will be very less, no? And hence, in such case, my political inclination should not be made public. In our constitution, right to privacy is a fundamental right. Under article, which article? Article 21, famous Puttaswamy case in 2017, Supreme Court declared right to privacy as fundamental right. Basically, in general, government or state or courts, they have to protect our right to privacy. So, for example, to which political party I am paying money, it should be personal to me. You should not be knowing to which political party I am giving money, to which political party I am giving vote. That should be left to me, right? That is what free election also means. In the start only we discussed, right? So, here my right to privacy should be protected. But no fundamental right in our constitution is absolute. That also you should be knowing. No fundamental right. All the fundamental rights, they have something called as reasonable restriction. Again, to give you an example, right to freedom of speech and expression, it is a fundamental right under Article 19. So, whatever comes to my mind, I can speak openly. Nobody can stop me from saying what I feel is right, what I feel is wrong. But it does not mean I can start abusing you, right? Because there is a reasonable restriction. I can criticize the state, I can criticize the government, but I can't say such things which will be threatening the integrity of India, because there is a reasonable restriction, right? So, no fundamental right is absolute in nature. That is one thing you should be knowing. All the fundamental rights, they have some reasonable restriction. As the word suggests, reasonable. Those restrictions, they are reasonable. Your rights have been curtailed for a reason. Because otherwise, the larger interest of the society will come under threat. If you give absolute right to say anything, you'll start saying such things to each other, which does not mean, first of all, which does not mean sense only. Secondly, which might hurt to others. For example, we can't say such things which promote hatredness in the society. That is a crime. Now you can't go to court. I said such thing, even then state is stopping me. They have filed a FIR against me. That is a reasonable restriction. Is it clear? Similarly, right to privacy is a fundamental right, but if for large donors, huh, large donors, what they can do is they can influence the decision making of the political parties, and hence they don't have this right of privacy. Is it clear? If tomorrow Ambani or Adani pays to BJP or Congress or JDS, Adani will be paying, hundreds of crore of rupees. You should be knowing. And later on, if the government which comes to power give the most of the contract to Adani, you should be knowing the government has given so many contract to Adani because Adani has given money to political party. This correlation you should be able to establish. Is it clear? So for such large donors, right to privacy, again they have a reasonable restriction against their right. But for small donors like us, so hence they kept a ceiling of 20,000 rupees. Any donation below 20,000 rupees, you can record anonymous. If a donation is above 20,000 rupees, you have to record it in your balance sheet. Second thing was, have you heard about Companies Act? So there is an act named Companies Act, which is applied on all the companies which are established in India. Companies Act 2013. This provision of Companies Act 2013, it used to say earlier that corporates, they also have a ceiling how much donation they can make to political party. There is a ceiling. So let's say there is a corporate which the profit of that corporate every year is 100 crore rupees, let's say. They can't give all the 100 crore which they have earned to political party as donation. Right? Are you getting it? Let's say take example of Reliance. In Reliance, majority shareholder is Ambani's, but Reliance is a listed company. That means you and me can also buy shares of Reliance. We are also owner of Reliance. If we buy share, basically we also become owner of Reliance, but our ownership will be limited. If I bought 1% share, I will be 1% owner only. Because Ambani's, they own more than 50% of the shares of Reliance. They are the majority shareholders, and hence all the decisions are taken by, all the decisions of Reliance are taken on behalf of or by Ambani's, because they are majority shareholder. If you come to majority, you will take decision. Right? Now let's say Ambani's tomorrow decide will give all the profit of Reliance to political parties. Right? That profit otherwise should have come to you, because you are also a stakeholder, you are also a shareholder. 1% profit should have come to you. If you have 1% shareholder, 1% profit should have come to you. But now because Ambani's decided that money should go to political party, your profit has gone. And more importantly, more than this, you see, more the money you allow the corporates to pay to political parties, more the influence corporates have over political parties. If somebody is giving 1 crore rupees to political party, they will have less influence. If somebody is giving 10 crore, they will have more influence. If somebody is giving 100 crore rupees to political party, they can ask even Prime Minister to do anything. It's just that thing will not come to public. In close room discussion, they can ask Prime Minister also, right? Because they have given money for him to win, or because of their money he has won. Are you getting it? And hence, Companies Act 2013, it used to say that corporates, they can fund only the maximum donation which they can make to political parties is only 7.5% of the average profit of last 3 years. So whatever is the profit in last 3 years of a corporate, 7.5% of that average you take, and only that much is the maximum they can donate to all the political parties combined. Let's say in a particular year, profit of a company is 98 crore, In next year it is 99 crore. In third year it is 103 crore. Average will be 100. So 7.5% of 100, that is only 7.5 crore they can maximum give to political parties as donation. Is it clear? So there are two provisions prior to electoral bond scheme coming into force. Prior to 2017 on corporates there were two, one was for political parties, that any donation which is above 20,000 rupees they have to record it. Secondly, corporates they can't donate money beyond this percentage. Is it clear? Now there were some problems with this kind of funding, and hence a new kind of scheme was brought to fund political parties. Can you tell me what are the problems with this kind of funding? And was only limited amount they can spend on parties. Anything else? There are some issues with this kind of funding, because of which government had to bring a new scheme, electoral bond scheme. This scheme was brought in 2017. So more problematic was this thing. Now you see, any donation which is above 20,000, it has to be recorded. It has to be made public, right? Corporates, they started hesitating to donate money to political parties. Reason being, let's say I'm owner of a big company. Let's say I'm owner of Reliance, again to take the same example. I'm owner of Reliance. If I donate a large chunk of money to political party A, political party B will start, they'll start having grudges on me. If tomorrow political party B wins election, they'll start taking revenge. They'll take, it is called as political vendetta. No? Why did you not give money to us? Why did you give money to party A? If I give money to BJP, if Congress comes to power tomorrow, Congress will start taking revenge from me. If I give money to Congress and BJP comes to power, and you trust me, state has so many means to even to shut down any corporate. The state has so much of power. Basically, government has so much of power. If they come to harass you, there are so many means. ED, CBI, income tax. There are so many means to, even to force you to shut your operation, no matter how rich you are. Are you getting it? Hence, there's problem of political vendetta. Problem. One challenge with this earlier kind of funding was political vendetta or revenge. Because any donation above 20,000 rupees, it was, supposed to be made public. Is it clear till now? So what corporates they used to do is, let's say a corporate has to give money to political party A, and let's say they have to give 1 crore rupees. Rather than giving 1 crore rupees in white means by check or by any electronic means, what they used to do is, they used to divide that 1 crore rupees into 20,000 rupees. Let's say I have 1 lakh rupees, I have to donate 1 lakh rupees, and I don't want my identity to be disclosed. What I'll be doing is, I'll find 5 of my friends. I'll give each of them 20,000, right? 1 lakh rupees, and then we'll give it to political party. Now the donation is of less than 20,000 rupees. Political party need not to disclose our name. If you have 1 lakh, if you have 10 lakh rupees, you need 50 people. If you have 1 crore rupees, you need 500 people. If you need to give 1 crore rupees, you need 5,000 people. Now, in a country of 140 crore population, country of India, which is 140 crore of population, finding people is not a big task. No, you just go to political party itself; they will find people for you. You just go to them, tell them I have 50 crore rupees to give it to you. It's just I don't want to disclose my name. They'll say, just you please sit, you have water, you have juice, we'll arrange people. And I mean, they themselves have so many of their registered, I mean, party members. In their names, they can, I mean, record this money, or in their names, they can take this money below 20,000. Are you getting it? So even the people who were having money in white, they were also paying by cash. There was huge usage of cash to fund political parties. Are you getting it? And when the majority of transaction or majority of funding is happening via cash, a lot of black money was also routed into the political funding. Because black money we can only give via cash only. Black money is the money on which you have not given tax. What is black money? Even if you have earned that money by legal means, but if you are not paying tax, that becomes black. Are you getting it? So, because now we are facilitating that, I mean, cash route of paying to political parties, the money, or there was more usage of black money, and secondly, more importantly, all the money which political parties were getting, majority of that they used to get by cash, not by, I mean, either by check or DD or any electronic means. So two problems were there in the earlier system. One is the corporates, they were frightened. They used to be fearful that they might be later on, I mean, become a victim of political vendetta, right? And second thing was large number of, highest number of political donations, they were by cash, not by check, DD or electronic means. Is it clear? Problems are clear? To deal with these two problems, government brought in 2017 electoral bond scheme. Till now, the story is clear to all of you. Anyone having doubt? No. Sure. If I ask later, will you be able to answer? Let's see. That's a good class. So now I'll be telling you the provisions of this scheme. Now government brought in 2017 a scheme named as electoral bond scheme. What are the provisions? Government said, first you try to understand what is electoral bond. Electoral bond. So bond, it is basically a bond. What does it mean? How does it work? Only one particular bank, that is SBI. Only one particular bank, that is SBI. What it will be doing is, it will be on few particular dates. On few particular dates, what you can do is, if you want to donate money to political party, what you can do is, you will be taking money to SBI. You will give money to SBI. In return, SBI will be giving you bond of same worth. Try to understand. Let's say I want to donate 10,000 rupees to political party A. What I'll be doing is, I'll take my 10,000 rupees to SBI. Pay attention here, okay, civil work. I'll give 10,000 rupees to SBI. In return, what SBI will be doing is, SBI will be giving me a bond worth of rupees 10,000. The beauty of this bond is, in this bond, nowhere it will be mentioned who has bought this bond. Now this bond has come to me. I have given money to SBI. SBI has given bond to me. To whichever political party A, B, C, to whichever political party I give this bond, that political party, by taking this bond to SBI, can get money from SBI. Is it clear? Let's say I am Ambani. What I'll be doing is, I'll buy a bond of 10 crore rupees. That bond, I'll give it to you. I'm Ambani, everybody knows me. But I mean, let's say if you are not that famous, I'll give that bond to you, an employee of Reliance. I'll ask you give this bond to political party A. You go to their office, give this bond to them, and that political party A will not get to know who has sent this bond. And anyhow, for them, how does it matter? They are getting money. To try to understand here, this bond is like a note. To whoever holds this bond, that person is the owner of this bond. Let's say you find tomorrow a note of 100 rupees. If you find it, if it is with you, you are owner of that note. I can't say tomorrow, no, I lost that 100 rupee note, you give it to me. Similar thing is this with this bond. If I have given this bond to political party A, they will get a chance to redeem it within 15 days from SBI. If somehow they lose it and political party B finds it, if they take this to SBI, party B will get this 10,000 rupees. Is it clear? Process is clear. Why there was a need of bringing this bond is now because on this bond nowhere it is mentioned who has bought this bond from SBI. And SBI was also by law mandated not to record or not to basically disclose the identity of buyers of these bonds. In any circumstance, SBI does not or will not be disclosing who has bought this bond from SBI. Is it clear? Now, political parties, they have got money. My identity, it was also not disclosed. That was the whole objective. And thirdly, you see, I have paid to SBI via, white money. So I can pay to them by maybe by issuing a check or by DD. Because I know my identity will not be disclosed. I can even use or any electronic means also to pay to political party. Is it clear? So both the problems which we have discussed earlier, they are resolved here. They'll not get to know. So that is good, na? You should not get. So corporates, right? So corporates, as I discussed earlier, they will be donating money to political party to get some favor. But now they are not, by this bond thing, they are not able to, or by getting this bond, political party will not get to know. But no corporate is fool enough not to tell to political party. Again, you see, let's say I am Ambani. I am donating money to party A. From this person, I am sending this money. Later on, I'll make a call. I'll make a call later on. I have donated you 10 crore rupees. But you see, the problem was party B should not be knowing that I have given money to party A. Even now, party B will not get to know. And hence, party B will not be taking revenge later on. Is it clear? Both the problems with earlier kind of funding, they are resolved here. Second change which was made, one change is clear? Acha. For this change, not to disclose the identity of the buyer, again that same RPA 1951 that was amended by the Finance Act of 2017. Earlier there was a provision that any donation above 20,000 rupees that has to be recorded and to be made public. So this scheme, when it was brought in 2017 by Finance Act of 2017, by this they amended this act. If someone is giving or donating money by electoral bond, no matter what amount of money they are giving, their identity will not be disclosed. It might be of 1 crore, 10 crore, 50 crore, 1000 crore. Their identity will not be disclosed. Is it clear? First provision is clear. Second, you remember earlier there was a cap, there was a ceiling. Only this much donation the corporates they can make. That ceiling was removed now. by when they brought this scheme by Finance Act of 2017, that ceiling of 7.5% that was removed. So Companies Act 2013, it was also amended, and now corporates, they can donate any amount of money to political parties. Second change also, you remember, the ceiling which was placed earlier by Companies Act 2013, that corporates, they can only donate 7.5% of average profit of last 3 years. That ceiling was removed. Now they can donate any amount they want. Is it clear to you all? Third change which was made by this scheme is that earlier there was a limit of 20,000 rupees, right? Any donation below 20,000 rupees, you can keep it anonymous. Now that 20,000 was reduced to 2,000. Only donations below 2,000 rupees can be kept anonymous. Otherwise, you have to make it public. You try to make a distinction here. If someone is donating money by electoral bond, it does not mean that you don't have option to pay by other means. You have, but if you pay by cash or check or DD or by, then you don't get this protection of not getting disclose your identity. Only if you pay by electoral bond, your identity will be safe. So even now you can pay by cash, by check, by DD, by NEFT, by RTGS, right? But if you are making a donation above 2,000 rupees, then your identity will be disclosed. So basically they were nudging the corporates to pay via or to donate via this route of electoral bond. You want your identity not to be disclosed, right? So you pay by bond. Is it difficult to understand? No? Till now is it clear? Third change is clear. Again, if someone is donating by bond, their identity will not be disclosed. Secondly, you can make any amount of donation you want. Thirdly, that 20,000 rupee limit, it was reduced to 2,000 rupees. Now donations below 2,000 rupees can be kept anonymous. Above 2,000 rupees, they have to be made public unless the donation has been made by bond. Now you must be thinking, this scheme is wonderful. All the problems of earlier way of funding, those has been resolved. Now there is no problem of vendetta. People, they are now paying via white money. By bond, if you are paying, basically by electronic mean or using check or direct bank to bank transfer you are making, right? So hence money is now, most of the money will be white money. So both those problems of high usage of cash as well as your identity getting disclosed, both those problems are resolved here. Now what is the problem? Why Supreme Court has struck it down? Is it clear? Intention behind bringing this scheme is clear. Now even then Supreme Court declared in the month of February this scheme as unconstitutional, null and void. Can you think of any reasons why Supreme Court might have done it? Anyone? Some of you said you read newspaper. At least those who read newspaper, you might have. So now you listen to me. Now you can write the Supreme Court in the month of February 2024, they struck down this scheme. They declared this scheme as unconstitutional, null and void. Now I will be telling you reasons why Supreme Court did so. First thing is, like I said, the right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21, and hence the identity of donor should be protected. Is it clear? But when you protect this identity, when you protect this right to privacy, what you are also doing is you are taking away another right of citizens, that is their right to information. All the voters of this country, they should be knowing who is paying how much to political parties. Then only you can take an informed decision while voting. There is a conflict between two fundamental rights here. One is right to privacy under Article 21, another is right to information of under Article 19. Right to privacy. If you protect this right, if you protect the identity of the donors, the voters, they will not get to know who has paid to which political parties and how much. By this electoral bond scheme, basically they are protecting the right of the donors. The identity of the donors were not disclosed. Is it clear? But what you are unintentionally, what you are doing is you are snatching this right of the voters. Now you see, voters are higher in number. All of us, or everyone, anyone who is above the age of 18, right? They have right to vote. So billions of people, their right you are taking in order to protect the rights of few, only large donors. Anyhow, right of small donors we are protecting. Any donation below 20,000 rupees, no need to disclose. And maximum number of donors, they pay less amount only. Only the right of large donors only, that was right to privacy of large donors only, that was threatened in earlier scheme. Is it clear? Any difficulty, please raise your hand, ask. Is it clear? So Supreme Court said, in order to protect this right, what you have essentially done is you have taken away this fundamental right of citizens. Now this right is of billions of people which you have taken away in order to protect the right of few. This cannot happen. This cannot happen, or we will be protecting, or we will be giving primacy to right to information over right to privacy of few. First logic is clear, first rationale is clear behind striking down this scheme. Second, Supreme Court said, you have removed, by bringing this scheme, what you have done is you have removed that cap of 7.5%, that restriction. Corporates, they can donate only this much to political parties. They said this removal is arbitrary in nature. If you allow any amount to be donated to political parties will be influenced by corporates, or basically it will be corporates which will be running the political parties. If a political party, let's say, is getting 100 crore rupees overall in a year as donation, if out of that 100 crore, 95 crore is paid by only 2-3 people, only 5 crore has been paid by people like us together. Those people who have given 95 crore, they will have much more say in the decisions of political party. Political parties' decision making will be captured by few. Political parties are not supposed to work for few people. They are supposed to work for nation, right? Or basically for their voters at least, if not to everyone, at least to their voters. They will become hostage. Political party will become hostage to few. Is it clear? Second reason is clear. This removal of 7.5% cap, it is arbitrary in nature. And anyhow, when we are discussing about right to privacy, Supreme Court said right to privacy will not protect this right of again such big donors whose motive is to influence the policy of the government. If people like us, we vote again, है ना, initially only we have discussed, when small donors they donate money to political parties, their motive is altruistic in nature. Altruistic means basically you give it because you like that political party, right? Your motive is noble. You really want this particular person to become prime minister. You find this person is very good for nation. His ideas, his policies, his vision, you find it right. But the motive of big donors is different. So we will not be protecting the right of those big donors. Thirdly, you see, then Supreme Court said, when earlier there was a cap of 20,000 rupees, right? That was a good balance between these two rights. For small donors, their identity was safeguarded. Only large donors' identity was disclosed. And lastly, you listen to me. So one rationale behind bringing this scheme was to protect the identity or anonymity of the donor. Supreme Court said कि by this scheme what you are doing is you are bringing selective anonymity. It is not anonymous only. Also, reason being, you first listen to me, the bonds can be issued only by one bank, that is SBI. SBI is a public sector bank. All the appointments in SBI, all the transfer posting are done by Government of India, by Finance Ministry. If tomorrow Finance Minister asks to the chairman of SBI, tell me who has given how much money to, who has bought how many bonds, right? He has to tell, no other option, otherwise he has to resign. Are you getting it? So the party which will be in power, be it party A, B or C, that party will anyhow get to know. Only the other parties, the opposition parties will not get to know, because they can't pressurize SBI. But party which is in power, they can pressurize SBI. And hence the anonymity thing which you are claiming, that is also selective. This information will not be disclosed to public as well as opposition parties, but party which is in power, that will anyhow get to know this information. Rationale behind striking down this scheme is clear. And hence Supreme Court said we are striking down this scheme, and later on they said now SBI has to give, what SBI has to do is SBI has to make all the donations from 2017 till now, they have to make it public. SBI initially they hesitated, they did not want to share it. Supreme Court gave the date of 6th of March to make it public. SBI did not do it. And hence in such, when you deliberately not follow the any direction or verdict given by High Court or Supreme Court, what these courts have a special power is something called as contempt of court. Supreme Court said will initiate this proceeding of contempt of court. In polity, again, you'll be discussing in detail when we'll be discussing higher judiciary, High Courts and Supreme Court. At the moment, you can remember subordinate courts or courts up to district level, they don't have this power. Only higher judiciary, that is High Court and Supreme Court, have this power. Contempt of court, contempt power are also of two types: civil contempt, criminal contempt. Again, those things we'll be discussing later on. But because Supreme Court threatened SBI, we are giving you one more week of deadline. If you don't furnish all this data by the date will start, so all the higher officials of SBI could have been sent behind bar if you deliberately not follow the judgment given by these courts. Is it clear? And ultimately SBI had to give this data, and Election Commission of India, it has made that data public also. So now you all know who has donated how much to which political party. The article which you have got in your this thing, they have discussed, can electoral bond scheme be a tool of extortion? Extortion, you understand? Extortion meaning, you understand extortion? And there is no rule of law. What you basically do is you threaten people, you give me money, otherwise I'll take such actions against you. Or basically taking money by illegal manner. So when underworld used to be very strong in India in 1990s, when people like Dawood Ibrahim and all, their gangs used to extort money from businessmen. Give us money, otherwise we'll shoot you. So can this be a tool to extort money? That was the article. You look at the copy which you have got. Now, what we have discussed till now is what is political funding, why do political parties they need money, right? How they were getting money before 2017, what were the changes made by this scheme, then what are the problems with this scheme because of which it has been declared unconstitutional. Now you see there are problems with the earlier system also, there are problems with this system also. Then how to fund? Political parties they need money. They can't function without money. Now, but you find a problem in all these possible manner in which we can pay money to. Then from UPSC point of view, in exam mains, when they ask questions on such topics, you have to, in the end, you have to give some suggestions also. Problems that is fine. But if you are preparing for civil services, because what you are trying to, or you are aspiring to be is, you are aspiring to be an IAS officer. IAS officers basically, they are the ones who give suggestions to the ministers. Later on, those ministers, they implement the decisions given by. So if you are trying to become IAS, your mind should be working in that manner. If there are problems with this scheme, so basically some IAS or only were there who suggested this scheme to the government at that time. You might have seen that finance secretary of that time, he gives so many interviews on this particular topic because they discussed many things, and on the basis of that they have given. But you see, your knowledge is also very limited. When people who are working in government for 25-30 years, those who are at secretary level position, they are not able to come with some suggestions. How can we give such suggestions? What you have to do in such cases is you have to rely on the reports, on the recommendations of some of the commissions, some of the committees which have been formed for electoral funding. We are not expert. Our limitation you should be knowing is, at the moment we are not expert. So what we will be doing is, we'll be quoting the recommendations made by some committees which have been formed, or the practices which are practiced in other democracies. How the political parties of other countries like Germany, France, USA, they are getting money. If those practices are better than ours, we can suggest some such practices. Is it clear? So in the end, you can write suggestions or recommendations for political funding. So earlier there was a committee which was formed for again to give suggestion to the government about electoral funding. That committee was headed by a person named as Indrajit Gupta committee. So the committee is also named after him. You can write Indrajit Gupta committee. What this committee has suggested is, have you written this? This committee has suggested for state funding of parties, state funding of elections, state funding of parties, anything you can write. State funding of elections or parties. What does it mean? Now you listen to me. We have discussed political parties, how do they get money? Right now they are getting from donors like us, individuals or corporates. This committee is saying you stop political parties to take money from individuals or corporates. The state should give money to political parties for their such expenses. But there are problems with it. Again, pros of this thing will be the problems of this scheme, they will be taken care. Now nobody will be able to influence the government, because no one is directly paying to the political party. है ना? This problem will be resolved. Nothing such thing called as crony capitalism. Have you heard this word? Crony capitalism. Crony capitalism. What does it mean? When there is a nexus between capitalist class and political class, when they work hand in hand, it is called as crony capitalism. Crony is crony. Crony capitalism. This word, this connotation, it is used in negative connotation. It is not a good thing. When capitalist class dictating political class, it is not a good thing. So this scheme of electoral bond, it had a threat of crony capitalism also, because then capitalist class, if they are giving huge chunk of money to political parties, they can dictate them. You do such thing, you do such that thing, right? Now, if you allow, if you stop political parties to take money from either corporates or individuals, right? You deal with this problem. That is, sorted. But the problem is, in this case, state will be funding only to such political parties, right, which have performed, or to the registered political parties only. What about independent candidates? Shall state be paying to independent candidates as well? If you say no, then it is not a level playing field. Initially only we have discussed election should be fair. All the candidates should have a fair chance, a equal chance to win the election. If you have got the ticket from BJP, Congress or JDS, you will get money from the state. But if I want to contest independently, I will not get money from the state. I can't take donation also from someone else. And hence, I am for sure I am going to lose the election. Then if you say, no, let's give money to independent candidates also. All of us have a right to contest election. Even if you know you will not get even a single vote, you will contest election, because at least by this manner you will get money from the state. Right? So, problem with this thing is, first of all, what about independent candidates? Second thing is, it will be highly burdening on exchequer or state. The state get money from taxes which we pay. So basically, you are transferring this burden on citizens only. The state will have to pay a very huge sum on election. Is it clear? Problems with this thing is, election, second recommendation you can write is, Election Commission of India. Election Commission of India has recommended that political parties must publish their accounts annually. Full stop. And accounts should be audited, and accounts of political parties should be audited by CAG. You know CAG? Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Accounts should be audited by CAG. So at the moment, this is what you have to write. So listen to me. At the moment, political parties, because they are not part of state, their accounts are not audited by CAG. They maintain their own account. They don't disclose even their account, and leave about auditing the account. CAG can't audit the account of political parties. What they can audit is, they can audit the accounts of central government, state government, right? But they can't audit or PSUs. They can't audit the accounts of political parties. So recommendation by Election Commission of India was that you allow the political parties account also to be audited by CAG. Then Law Commission has also given the same recommendation. One is state funding, which has already been, you have written in Rajit Gupta committee, has also given the same recommendation. So same Law Commission also, one in 1999, they have also given the same recommendation. Then earlier provision also you can write that there should be a cap, there should be a ceiling or cap, that this much only corporates they can fund to political parties. है ना? That cap is a good thing. Funding, if even if you allow funding by corporates, there should be a cap. One more thing is, people say, acha, at RPA we have discussed Representation of People Act. This RPA also has a provision that there will be a limit on how much a candidate can spend during election. Let's say you are contesting election of member of parliament. So limit is, I guess, 95 lakh rupees. The maximum expense you can do is 95 lakh rupees. Although we all know this limit is never, adhered to. It is breached. Anyhow, only the very richest of the richest people, they are allowed. They generally get ticket to contest election by all political parties. So because they have money to influence voters. So but RPA also does not have a provision to cap the expenditure by political parties. What they have is, there is a law to cap the expenditure made by candidates but not by political parties. Election Commission has recommended that there should be a cap on the expenditure which is done or incurred by political parties as a whole. Because otherwise what is happening is, there is a kind of race. The more money you have, basically you have kind of arms to win the election. So it has become a race, and more the financial arms you have, more the chances you have to win the election. Right? So parties, they need more money. In order to get more money, they are forcing corporates to give more money. When corporates are giving more money, they are influencing parties' decisions later. So we are stuck in a vicious cycle. Basically, if you look at from the broad point of view, what you have to see is, we have to reduce the overall expenditure in the elections. If parties will be needing less money, there will be less donation from corporates. If donation will be less, then their say in the politics will be less. Is it clear? And one last suggestion will be something called as National Electoral Trust. National Electoral Trust. Listen to me about this thing is, basically it is a trust. Trustee of this trust will be government. What will be happening is, all of us, when we donate money, will not be donating to individual political parties. All the corporates or individuals, when they will be donating money, what they will be doing is, they will be giving their money to this trust. Let's say I want to donate 5,000 rupees. That money will be going to this trust. If Reliance is willing to pay 1 crore rupees, that money will also come to this trust. Later on, out of this trust, money will be going to party A, B, C. No. On the basis of how much votes you have got in the last elections. That means you are more popular. If you have got in last elections, if you have got more votes, that means you are more popular. You'll get money in the same proportion. Let's say in the last election, this party got 50% vote, this party got 30%, this party got 20%. Out of this total money which has been collected here, 50% will go to party A, 30% will go to party B. In this way, we don't choose to which political party we are paying, and hence we cannot become victim of political vendetta. Again, the problem will be, what about individual candidates, and more importantly, if a party is contesting election for the first time. Let's say Aam Aadmi Party, it started contesting in 2015 only. What if when in 2015 they were contesting, in that year they would not have got even a single penny, because in the last election they did not contest only, right? So if a party is contesting, so there are pros and cons of everything. Had this scheme was so good, it is already under operation, but nobody pays money to this trust. We all pay to political party directly. Is it clear? The last suggestion is we have to make this way of funding more effective. And hence political parties will also not be able to extort money. The threat which they have written here is that political parties might use these tools to extort money from the businessman, right? They'll not be able to do it. Is it clear? Fairness, this way it will be problematic, that again independent candidates, they will be finding it difficult to get money. Secondly, a party which is new, that party will also not be getting money. Again, all these suggestions, none of them, they are completely foolproof. Had these suggestions were such good suggestions, we would have implemented it. All these suggestions, they also have problems. From UPSC point of view, you should be knowing these are the alternatives we have. Is it clear? In exam, if a question comes on electoral bond or electoral funding also, right? In the end, even if they have not asked what to do next, but in the end, in the conclusion, when you write, right, those 3-4 lines, you have to be future oriented. You have to be giving suggestions. Then only they'll be knowing you know the issue comprehensively. You know the issue in detail. Is it clear? Now, if you read this article which is given to you, you'll be finding it very easy to understand. 3-4 lines are there. I guess they have further said that government is able to, the government has a chance to extort money from this scheme because government also has lot of ways to influence the businesses. So government decides to which corporate we have to give this contract. Government frames rules to give. Are you getting it? Now government makes rules in such a manner that only this corporate will be getting contract. So this article is suggesting what we need to do is we need to reduce the role of the government in businesses. Then corporates will not be having that urge to pay money to government, so because they are not getting anything in return from the government. Is it clear? If you read this, I guess it is very easy now to understand. This was one topic. I thought I'll be at least discussing 3, 4, 5. Any doubts in this? Now, if you are reading newspaper and all, you'll find many corporates who have given money to political parties. On those corporates, few days before only, there was some or other kind of raid by either ED or CBI or IT. What does it mean? Because this data is out now, the correlation you can easily establish. IT raided to one corporate office. Few days after, that corporate has given these many bonds, bonds of this much worth to that political party, and later on IT stopped its raid or its complete investigation only. That's how government works. You all want to become part of government and with very such noble intentions, but you should be knowing the reality, how governments they function. Is it clear? One more topic we'll be discussing quickly is, okay, these days there is a news about Kachativu Island. Have you heard about this? Where is it? Near Sri Lanka. So you will find this in your hard copy which you have got. Kachativu Island, you'll find the map of Kachativu Island. You first open that map. You got this, that topic, Kachativu Island. Why it is in news? Anyone else? Why this topic is in news? Everything is related to elections. That is fine. No, that means people don't read newspaper. As you are not, new to this preparation, let me be, telling you, current affairs, right? It is very significant both in prelims as well as mains. If you, take the in mains, if you take the papers of GS2 and GS3, polity IR, in GS2 polity IR and governance, in GS3 economy, internal security, then science and tech, then disaster management and environment. In all of these topics, right, there will be something or other current affairs things happening. Let's say if we'll be discussing Kachativu Island, if electoral bond scheme we have discussed, it is part of polity. Now such topics, they become important in exam. In prelims also, half of the questions of economy, half of the questions of science and tech, few questions from polity, except history. In all the subjects you'll be finding questions are somehow or other linked to current affairs. If you don't have solid grip on current affairs, or if you don't prepare these topics in detail, you'll be finding out of 3-4 statements, at least 1 or 2 you are finding it difficult to mark, and because of that also you'll not be able to answer, or there are higher chances you'll get negative marks also, because you know two options at least. You'll have that urge to mark. If you don't know at all, you'll leave that question, you'll get 0 marks. But if you have at least half of the knowledge, you'll have that tendency to mark. Then you'll get negative marks also. So I'll suggest you give at least, if not 3-4 hours, at least 1 hour of your day to read newspaper. That I tell to everyone, it will be helpful not just in enhancing your knowledge. I don't know how many of you are from vernacular medium and all. It will be really helpful in improving your vocab as well, your vocabulary. So the words which you find in newspaper and all, they will be helpful in CSAT paper as well. These days people they fail, large number of candidates, they fail in CSAT paper as well, even though that is qualifying only. You need to get only 1/3 of the marks. So out of 200 you need only 66.66. Even that you find difficult, because mathematics, many of us are from humanities, we find that difficult. People say that's why we chose humanities, because we are not good at mathematics. Secondly, when they ask English, then because we don't have reading habits, our vocab will not be that good. Overall, you'll be finding it difficult to get 1/3 marks also. Hence start reading newspaper. Newspaper you can choose any newspaper out of those 3-4 good newspaper, anyone you choose, but you read newspaper. Kachativu Island. So it is in news. Reason being, recently an RTI was filed by the state party chief of BJP in Tamil Nadu, that is Annamalai. Annamalai is the BJP chief in Tamil Nadu. So an RTI is filed about this Kachativu Island. In that RTI, the response was, when this island, it was ceded or it was given to Sri Lanka in 1974 by the government of India. In that RTI, the response was, even the government of Tamil Nadu, even the government of Tamil Nadu also did not oppose this ceding of this island. Ceding means separation or giving away this island, right? So till now what we knew, it was Indira Gandhi government in 1974 which gave away this island to Sri Lanka. In this RTI, what new he is claiming is, even the then government in Tamil Nadu At that time, the CM used to be Karunanidhi, the late Karunanidhi, the father of present CM, from DMK party. Even DMK party also did not oppose to this seeding. Now, why they have later on Prime Minister also said the same thing in a political rally, and hence it became a national news. Now, why they have taken only this time to pick up this matter, because elections are coming. That is fine, and you need not to bother about it. But about this Kachativu Island, what is the history of this island, where it is located, and these things, this become important from exam point of view. So you can all locate Kachativu Island. Because I might not be able to draw the map. Let's say if this is southern part of India, somewhere here you will be finding Sri Lanka. I'm drawing roughly. Somewhere here you will be finding Sri Lanka. If you zoom this thing, if you zoom India's map, it is somehow like, it extends little bit towards Sri Lanka. And if you see by zooming this point, it is called as the point nearest to Sri Lanka. It is called as Rameshwaram, and this point, this southernmost point of India, it is Kanyakumari. This is Rameshwaram. This is Kanyakumari. Is Kanyakumari the southernmost point of India? So what we also, apart from this mainland India, what we also have is here Andaman and Nicobar. Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and here we have the southernmost point of India, that is Indira Point. So if they ask, is Kanyakumari the southernmost point of India? No, it is southernmost point of this mainland India. Otherwise, we have a point here that is named as Indira Point. You can find the latitude and longitude also of this point. It will be 6 degrees something. Now coming to Kachativu Island, here somewhere here you will be finding a island. That island is Kachativu Island. It is in northeast of Rameshwaram. Is it clear? If this is Rameshwaram, this is Kachativu Island, this is Kanyakumari. Now I'll not be taking lot of time to finish this topic. You see, otherwise the area of this island is very small. It is nearly 285 acre. So it's like the Chandra layout area. The total area of this island is nearly about this Chandra layout. But you see, location of this island is very strategic. I'll be coming to that. Secondly, it is generally said this island is, anyhow geographically also, it is not very old island. In 14th century only. 14th century nearly. So 14th century only, by a volcanic eruption, this island was formed. It was not there earlier. It was formed very recently in 14th century. Very recently I am saying because of geographical time scale. On that scale, it is very small time. Is it clear? On that scale, 700 years is nothing. So it is a very new creation. Is it clear? Then there is a very old church also here, because you know India as well as Sri Lanka, they were both colony of British. Under British rule, they constructed a church also, Saint Anthony's Church. That is also very popular. Saint Anthony's Church, that is also very popular among Christians of both the countries. There is an annual festival here in which both, again, Christians of India as well as Christians from Sri Lanka, they go there, visit there in large numbers. Is it clear? So about Kachativu Island, it is located northeast of Rameshwaram. Then during British time, this island used to be governed, or the zamindari rights over this island used to be with a dynasty here in Tamil Nadu. Okay. There was a king here in Tamil Nadu. That king was having the zamindari rights over Kachativu. What I am trying to imply is, Kachativu till 1974, it belonged to Indian king. Is it clear? Now dispute over Kachativu Island, it started. Acha, if you want to write the name of the dynasty, that also you can write Ramanad, Ramanad. So Ramanad dynasty, it was having control over Kachativu Island during British time. This much you remember. है ना? During British time, the Ramanad king, he was having control over Kachativu Island. You see, in 1921, now I'll wrap it up quickly. In 1921, the dispute between Sri Lanka and India started over this island. Till 1921, there's no dispute. This king was controlling this island. The population there is, I mean, almost nil. Population, nobody lives on this island, but you need this island under your possession. So in 1921, British, what they did was they conducted a maritime survey here. In that survey, they said this island, it is nearer to Sri Lanka. It should be in the maritime border of Sri Lanka and not of India. Is it clear? In 1921, a survey was conducted by British. In that survey, they said Kachativu Island should belong to Sri Lanka. From that time onwards, Sri Lanka started claiming over Kachativu Island. Is it clear? Kachativu spelling you all know? It is given in your KATCHA THWU. Okay? Till now, is it clear? Now, this dispute, from that time, Sri Lanka started demanding for rights over this island, but British India at that time, they opposed to it. They said no, over this island since centuries, we are the people who are controlling or ruling over this island, will not give it to Sri Lanka. And hence, even after British leaving in 1947 from both these countries, India as well as Sri Lanka, this dispute remained. Is it clear? And after independence, you see, we both are neighboring countries. There should not be such persistent issues. You give me 10 more minutes. 5 minutes. 5 o'clock. You need a break. Class is at 5, right? So we have time. Okay, 5 more minutes. I'll finish it. So you listen to me quickly, don't write. So is it clear? After independence also this issue, it lingered on. And hence in 1974, when the Prime Minister of India at that time used to be Indira Gandhi. And here also Bandara Naike, she was the president of Sri Lanka at that time. If you know about Bandara Naike, she is the first head of the government, not just in Sri Lanka or in South Asia, worldwide. First woman head of the state, head of the government is Srimati Bandara Naike. That is also, if Group C, Group D exam they might ask. Is it clear? Bandara Naike. Both of them, they had an agreement ki will cede. Anyhow, in that survey it was mentioned that this island should belong to Sri Lanka. They said Indira Gandhi government, it had an international agreement, a government to government agreement, that now onwards this island will belong to Sri Lanka. But while doing so, they ensured that some of the rights of fishermen of India, they are also safeguarded. So even after giving away this island to Sri Lanka, what was written in that agreement is the Indian fishermen will be allowed to go to this island, take rest there. If they are fishing here, if they are tired, they can go to Kachativu, they can take rest here, they can dry their nets here. They all will be allowed to go to that church which I mentioned, St. Anthony's Church. So if they are interested, they can visit to that church also. For all these activities, there will be no need of visa, passport, any document. Is it clear? Indian fishermen will still be having these rights. But the thing is, this agreement was silent upon fishing rights of the Indian fishermen. Whether Indian fishermen will be allowed to fish here, whether they can catch fishes from here. This thing was not written, but they can take rest here, they can dry their nets here, they can come and visit that church. These things are mentioned in the right. In 1976, in return of what India favored, right? Here there is an area here towards south of Kanyakumari. That area is called as Vej. I mean, it is not an island, it is kind of a region only. It is a very big region. In 1976, this region was given by Sri Lanka to India. Earlier, both the countries, they were claiming over this region as well. In return of what India did in 1974, over this Wage Bank area, Wage Bank you write. In 1976, Wage Bank area was given, or Sri Lanka stopped claiming over this region. Is it clear? It was like, again, it was like quid pro quo. You give it this to us. Same thing if you read newspaper, same thing China sometimes also suggests. You give us Arunachal Pradesh, we'll give you Ladakh. Some part of Ladakh is in China right now, right? So China says, but that is not a, favorable deal to us. But here, are you getting it? 1974, what happened? We gave this island to Sri Lanka. In 1976, Sri Lanka also stopped claiming over this region. This region is also very, very significant. First of all, a lot of trade, international trade happens via this route. Secondly, this region has lot of, it is a very major fishing ground. It is very rich in fishes. So fishermen of both Kerala as well as Tamil Nadu, they used to go there and they used to fish. Sri Lankan fishermen, they stopped going to there. Now you see, after this, the problem is, at that time in 1974, when we were giving this island, what this RTI now says, the Karunanidhi government of Tamil Nadu, they did not oppose to this move of the central government. Is it clear? You listen to me further. Now, after Karunanidhi, the government which came to power here is of Jayalalitha. In 1991, she made it a big issue that Indian fishermen should have right of fishing here. They should have a right to fish here, and hence she passed a resolution in the Assembly of Tamil Nadu. Resolutions of Assembly, they are not binding on Parliament, but they are just basically the wish of the people of Tamil Nadu. It was made clear, and they passed a resolution in the Assembly of Tamil Nadu that Government of India should take steps to get it back from Sri Lanka. Is it clear? In fact, Indian government, they tried to, raise this issue with the Sri Lanka at that time. But the thing is, if you remember, since mid of 1980s, Sri Lanka entered into something called as civil war. LTTE, have you heard about LTTE? Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam. Prabhakaran, have you heard about Prabhakaran? Famous. So they entered into civil war, and hence they did not, their focus was within their internal, situation which was there. And at that time, in fact, because of this reason only, the navy of Sri Lanka was also very weak. So what used to happen is, even though in 1974 we gave away this island to the Sri Lanka, Indian fishermen, they used to freely go. They used to fish here also. So because navy of Sri Lanka, it was busy, and it was anyhow not very strong at that time in 1980s, 70s. So Indian fishermen, they had this habit of, even after giving this island to Sri Lanka, they were having that habit to go to Kachativu, fish there. But as soon as this civil war ended in 2009, Sri Lankan Navy, they became assertive that now this island belongs to us only. 1974 itself, we have given it to us. No Indian fishermen will now come to here on Kachativu and fish. The fishing resources of this island, they belong to Sri Lankans, not to Indians. And hence they started arresting Indian fishermen. They started breaking their boat if they come. And every time but now Indian fishermen, they have this habit of, decades to go there. They used to treat Kachativu as their own territory only. Anytime we can go there, right? So it used to be, every time it used to be a very big diplomatic problem. Tamil Nadu government, it will be pressurizing New Delhi central government. Central government then will be calling to Sri Lankan government, please release them, these fishermen, and things like this. And to people of Sri Lanka, it is a very emotional thing now. People of Tamil Nadu, people of Tamil Nadu, they want this island back. Is it clear? In fact, in 2009, J. Jayalalitha, CM of Tamil Nadu at the time, she in fact approached to Supreme Court also, कि to cede any territory from India, what government had to do is government had to bring a constitutional amendment bill in the parliament. Government directly itself can't make such agreement with the another country. Supreme Court till now has not, taken up this matter. So Supreme Court has this prerogative. They have this discretion. When they find a matter correct, right time to listen to that matter, then only they. For example, on CAA, they have not started listening or hearing. CAA, this act was brought in 2019. Article 370, it was abrogated in 2019. That was discussed last year. It is up to Supreme Court when they take a particular matter, right? But in a small hearing, the Attorney General at that time, he said, because we have made an international agreement with Sri Lanka, now war only, by war only we can take it back. Otherwise, unilaterally, we can't take this island back. Is it clear? So the issue is, we know that the government, present government also, they don't have intention to take it back. But because it is election time, at least you can use these sentiment or emotions of the people of Tamil Nadu to get their votes. Because when the same question was posed to a minister of Sri Lanka recently, the Prime Minister of India has said this, कि Kachativu, it should be belonging to India. They said, till now there has been no communication to us from Indian side. Otherwise, Prime Minister or this government is there for last 10 years. In last 10 years, they have not written a single letter to the government of Sri Lanka. So even Sri Lankan government is saying, because we know there are elections in India, so they might be saying because of those reasons. Are you getting it? From exam point of view, no need to go into, politics of this issue. You should be knowing where it is located. This region, it is called as Gulf of Mannar. Have you heard about Gulf of Mannar? Right? This region, it is called as Palk Strait. Palk, Palk Strait. This is Rameshwaram. After Rameshwaram, in all the atlas and all, you will be finding such dots here. It is called as, from mythology, it is called as Ram Setu, which British, they named it as Adam's Bridge. Is it clear? So from Kanyakumari, you will be finding. So these locations you should be knowing. From exam point of view, these things only are important. I could have discussed some more things about this thing, but important things are this much only. We have paucity of time. You people need break. You have a class at 5. Thank you so much. If you have any doubts, you can ask.